Right, so you know that feeling when you're absolutely certain your mate's going to pay you back the 50 quid they owe you, only to find out they've somehow managed to rack up another £200 of debt while you weren't looking. Well, welcome to Rachel Reeves's world right now, because Andrew Neil just delivered the political equivalent of a reality check with all the subtlety of a brick through a window. The veteran broadcaster has basically told our Chancellor that her favourite blame game is officially over, and honestly, watching this unfold is like witnessing someone try to explain why their homework got eaten by the dog for the third time this month. Spoiler alert, nobody's buying it anymore. So let's dive into this absolute masterclass in political brutality, shall we? Because when Andrew Neil decides to go for the jugular, it's less like watching a debate and more like watching a surgeon perform an operation with a chainsaw. Now, if you've been following UK politics with even half an eye open, you'll know that Rachel Reeves has made something of a career out of pointing at the Conservatives and shouting about their £22 billion black hole. It's been her greatest hit, her signature tune, the political equivalent of that one song you hear on the radio 17 times a day until you want to throw your stereo out the window. She's basically turned, but the Tories left us this mess into an art form. But here's where things get absolutely delicious in the most catastrophic way possible. The National Institute of Economic and Social Research, which sounds incredibly boring but is actually one of the most respected think tanks in the country, has just dropped a bombshell that makes Reeves's $22 billion look like loose change down the back of the sofa. They're saying she's now facing a £51 billion black hole. That's not a typo, by the way. 51 billion. With a B. That's the kind of number that makes you question whether we're still talking about money or if we've accidentally slipped into discussing the distance to Mars. And this is where Andrew Neil swoops in like some sort of political vulture, circling overhead and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. His message to Reeves is crystal clear: this time, love, you can't pin it on the other lot. This one's all yours. It's like watching someone try to blame their ex for the fact that they've just crashed their new car into a lamppost. Sure, maybe your ex was terrible with money, but this particular disaster? That's happening on your watch, mate. The timing of this couldn't be more perfect if it were scripted by the writers of The Thick of It. Here we have Reeves, who spent months building her entire political brand around being the sensible one who's going to clean up the Conservative mess, suddenly finding herself in a deeper hole than the one she started in. It's like watching someone claim they're going to fix a leaky tap only to flood the entire house. But let's break down exactly what Niesr is saying here, because it's genuinely mind-bending. They're essentially telling Reeves that she's caught in what they call an impossible trilemma. Now, I don't know who comes up with these terms, but it sounds like something you'd encounter in a particularly sadistic escape room. You've got three options, and all of them are terrible. Option 1, stick to your fiscal rules. Option 2, keep your spending promises. Option 3, don't raise taxes. Pick 2, because you can't have all three. It's like being told you can have a house, a social life, and enough sleep, but only if you're willing to give up one of them. Spoiler alert, it's probably going to be the sleep. The really delicious irony here is that Reeves has spent so much time talking tough about fiscal responsibility that she's basically painted herself into a corner with gold paint. She can't break her own rules without looking like a complete hypocrite, but she also can't keep all her promises without breaking those rules. It's the political equivalent of promising to lose weight while simultaneously opening a bakery. And Andrew Neil, bless him, is watching this unfold with all the glee of someone who's just watched their least favorite politician step on a rake. His tweet about this whole situation reads like he's barely containing his glee. You can practically hear him chuckling as he types it out. Professor Stephen Millard from Niesr has basically looked at Reeves's situation and delivered what can only be described as the academic equivalent of "you're screwed, mate." He's saying that to fill this black hole, we'd need to see income tax rates go up by 5 percentage points across the board. 5 percentage points. That's not a gentle nudge, that's the fiscal equivalent of being hit by a freight train. Just to put this in perspective, if you're currently paying 20% basic rate tax, you'd be looking at 25%. If you're on the higher rate of 40%, congratulations, you're now at 45%. It's like being told that your morning coffee is going to cost an extra £1.50, except instead of coffee, it's your entire income. The shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, has obviously jumped on this like a cat on a particularly slow-moving mouse. He's basically doing a victory lap, saying, "We told you so," with all the enthusiasm of someone who's just won a bet they really didn't want to win. His line about Labour always reaching for the tax rise lever because they don't understand the economy is the kind of zinger that probably had him practicing in the mirror for weeks. But here's what's really fascinating about this whole situation. Reeves has spent so much political capital talking about that initial $22 billion black hole that she's now in the awkward position of having to explain how the hole got bigger while she was supposedly fixing it. It's like claiming you're going to repair a puncture in your tire only to discover you've somehow managed to puncture 3 more tires in the process. The speculation around the autumn budget is now reaching fever pitch. We're hearing whispers about wealth taxes, which is political speak for we're going to find creative ways to get money out of people who have it. It's like being told that the restaurant you're in is going to start charging extra for using the napkins. What makes this even more delicious is the timing. Labour came into power promising to be the adults in the room, the sensible ones who would sort out the mess left by the previous government. Instead, they're starting to look like someone who criticized their predecessors' driving skills only to immediately reverse into a bus stop. Andrew Neil's intervention here is particularly brutal because he's not just some random commentator throwing stones. This is a man who's been around Westminster longer than most of the furniture, and when he says you can't blame the previous government anymore, it carries the kind of weight that makes politicians wake up in a cold sweat. The really tragic thing about all this is that Reeves genuinely seems to have walked into this with the best of intentions. She wanted to be the Chancellor who restored credibility to Britain's finances. Instead, she's turning into a cautionary tale about the dangers of making promises you can't keep while standing in a rapidly expanding sinkhole. And let's be honest, the British public is getting pretty tired of being told that the solution to every problem is higher taxes. We've been down this road before, and it usually ends with everyone being poorer and the government still complaining they don't have enough money. It's like being told that the way to fix your leaky roof is to sell your car and live in the garden. The fact that even a left-leaning think tank like Niesr is sounding the alarm bells should tell you everything you need to know about how serious this situation has become. When your own side starts telling you that you're in trouble, that's not a gentle warning, that's the political equivalent of your best mate staging an intervention. What's particularly galling is that Labour spent years in opposition perfecting their economic messaging, positioning themselves as the fiscally responsible alternative. Now they're in power, and it turns out that governing is slightly more complicated than shouting at the other side from the opposition benches. Who could have seen that coming? The autumn budget is now shaping up to be less of a financial statement and more of a political survival exercise. Reeves is going to have to stand up in Parliament and essentially admit that things are even worse than she thought, and oh, by the way, everyone's going to have to pay more tax to fix it. It's like being invited to a party only to discover you're expected to pay for everyone else's drinks. Andrew Neil's timing with this intervention is absolutely perfect. He's essentially kicking someone when they're down, but doing it with such precision and style that you can't help but admire the craftsmanship. It's political commentary as performance art. So here we are, watching Rachel Reeves discover that being Chancellor is a bit like being handed the controls of a plane mid-flight, only to realize that not only is the plane already on fire, but someone's also stolen the instruction manual. And Andrew Neil is essentially standing there with a megaphone, helpfully pointing out that this particular crash landing can't be blamed on the previous pilot. The next few weeks are going to be absolutely fascinating to watch. Will Reeves find a way out of this mess? Will she stick to her fiscal rules and break her spending promises? Will she raise taxes and break her manifesto commitments? Or will she try some sort of political gymnastics routine that somehow squares this impossible circle? Whatever happens, one thing is certain, Andrew Neil has just reminded everyone that the blame game has an expiration date, and Rachel Reeves just hit hers. The political honeymoon is officially over, and reality has come knocking with a £51 billion bill. If you enjoyed watching this political car crash unfold as much as I did, make sure you're subscribed to UK Daily Coffee because trust me, this story is nowhere near finished. We'll be following every twist, turn, and spectacular political faceplant as they happen. Hit that notification bell because in British politics right now, the next disaster is always just around the corner, and you won't want to miss a second of the chaos. Until next time, keep your coffee strong and your political expectations appropriately low.